Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grip Lock, Foundation Disc Golf's weekly podcast. I'm Hunter, joined as always by Trevor. And let's just jump right into this. We had the Preserve go down last weekend, and it brought a pretty thrilling finish. Yet again, we had Ricky winning by 1 over Eagle, Paul McBeth coming in third, and normally we only do the top three, but Gannon Burr, 16-year-old, came in fourth. We'll talk about that again in a second. But part of the reason I think that the Preserve has been able to deliver back-to-back thrilling finishes has been the 18th hole.
Yeah.
Because the 18th hole is a par 5 that is capable of producing realistically 3s through 6s. I saw some 7 and 8s in the field. I think I even saw a 9 in the field. But realistically, there's OB when you're approaching the hole and stuff like that, so where you could get a 5 or a 6 on it, but the pros are capable of 3ing it as well.
Yeah.
So if you're within like 2 strokes going to the final hole, you got a shot still.
I think I've decided that because of the nature of disc golf and just the way scoring works in the sport, that a hard par 5, or at least a par 5 where 3, 4, and 5 are all in play, like at least 3 different possibilities, it makes for the most interesting finish.
Well, the same with a 4, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really just,
I like the 5.
I like the 5.
I think in disc golf, I think the 5 you have a better chance of having that 3-stroke possibility, whereas a 4, a lot of times 4s are a little bit tougher to do that. I'm a fan of the finishing hole. It was really exciting.
Yeah, because I think
legitimately too a tough eagle even for the biggest arm.
Yeah.
So like that is why I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean it's just like whenever there's a par 3 finishing hole that's not tough, not like a tough par 3, because there's some tough par 3s where a 3 feels good,
right,
and it can play kind of like a par 4 where there's a 2, 3, 4. But where it's just a normal par 3, it kind of like coming down the stretch going into this final hole, it wouldn't have been exciting.
Yeah,
because it would have just been as soon as the tee shot lands, you know whether it's over or not.
Right.
It was
definitely anybody's game. The whole stretch was not, even though a lot of the holes weren't super difficult, what was saving the course was the wind was helping, and then also the greens and the pin placements. I think I've decided from this year, and they did it a lot on the golf courses with the bunkers earlier in the year, but disc golf has started to get a lot smarter with pin placements, making upshots very treacherous and very difficult, to where Eagle McMahon or Paul McBeth is staring down a little putter length upshot and throwing it 30 feet short and left or 50 past the basket because of how tough the greens are. And like that is a big thing that has been underutilized in disc golf, is just how much harder you can make a hole by making that pin just a little bit closer to a natural hazard of some sort, like a big downslope, or an actual hazard like a bunker or an OB line, to where it's very simple to do. And another thing I'd like to see in the future is different pin placements on different days. I realize that requires a lot of maintenance, especially if the course is permanent, but I think there's a lot more possibilities that have been explored thus far in disc golf.
Yeah, I agree. I think the pin placement in greens is kind of the next development in course design.
That's such a fun thing in golf, to where imagine in disc golf, you're playing USDGC, for example, and they've experimented with some different pin placements. But you get to moving day and all the pins are just in green light position, to where everybody is allowed to just run shots, attack. And so you see, the scores all of a sudden, just everybody, it's like people love the Preserve, right? Because they love that there's like all the scoring going on. Like people enjoy that. A lot of people do, at least. You can have that within a lot of tournaments just by making pin positions easier for one day out of the round or out of the event, so that you have a day where it feels like birdie or died, where it's the moving day. And, that's not super difficult to accomplish.
No, yeah. And I also think that having treacherous greens, kind of like you were talking about, like a natural drop off or hazard behind, it also makes the putts that much more impressive.
Oh, yeah.
A 50-foot putt on a wide open hole, it's impressive, but then a 50-foot putt on a wide open hole when there's a massive drop off behind, it just immediately adds that, like, holy cow, like he went for that.
It adds to your upshot strategy too, because if you have just a flat surface, that guy doesn't care where he is within a 30-foot radius.
No, he just needs to get within 30 feet.
Whereas it's a thing in golf where guys are trying to leave the ball underneath the hole to where they're putting uphill. It's the same in disc golf. If you have a giant slope, you want to be putting uphill. So it becomes then part of your strategy to trying to leave the disc below the pin. And that just makes the game harder and more complex as well.
See, I'm actually on the opposite side. I like being up on top of
You
the
like
hill
putting
looking down.
downhill? It's easier.
I'm terrified uphill putts. Because I always leave them short, and they always stand up and roll back behind me. But it's a strategy thing.
Yeah.
Because I know
it's
my
your
game.
preference.
Yes, I know my game. So if I see a hill slope, I'm trying to run the basket and end up 10, 15 feet behind it on the uphill side. Versus other players, you're right, would rather have the safer putt and be on the downhill. But regardless, it makes me think about my upshot a lot more.
Yeah.
If it's flat, we're not really thinking about it. We're just getting close.
Right.
So you're right in that the hill, depending on whether person's preference up on top or below, it does make you think about it. And the same with the hazards and drop-offs and stuff like that. But the course wasn't as much of a birdie fest this year. I think last year we did a whole podcast on kind of like birdie or die golf, essentially. And it was basically because of the preserve.
Right.
Because the preserve was, I believe Nico won with like a 41 under par. This year, Ricky won with like a 35. I think where Ricky shot this year would have put him in like 8th or 9th place last year.
Yeah.
Was kind of the difference there.
Well, and right now with our game is we know a course does its job because the way the field is right now in really men's and women's divisions. Because of the way the field is, we know a course has done a really good job when the best players, which right now we have very clear best players, are rising to the top. And the preserve was able to do that this year. You know, our top 3 premier players in the game right now were first, second, third. So that's, that to me says, the course did its job.
Yeah. Now, speaking to the finish, I was pretty surprised that Eagle didn't take it down.
I was too. I thought it was his.
He was in prime position. He ended up hitting like a super clutch putt. I believe it was on 16.
That putt was sick. That putt was. I thought that putt was unmakeable.
Yeah, when he hit that, like in my head, I was like, okay, well,
yeah,
it's done. But then on 17, which is a shorter par 3, it's like 240 feet. He just shanked it.
Yeah,
straight into the trees to the right.
They literally they gave him the commentator's curse too, saying that he hadn't hit the gap all week, and I was like, I just knew after they said, I was like, oh, there's no way he's getting it, and yeah, just completely yanked it into the tree. That's not really a strength of his, those shots. Like you kind of knew Ricky's fine at them, and you knew Paul was hitting that gap.
Yeah, that's kind of Paul's bread and butter.
That's really his game. But you just didn't. And he went to the standstill, I think, for that last one too. Like you could tell he didn't really.
He wasn't super confident.
And I think he definitely was scared of the early release, so he overcompensated and yanked it. Yeah, it was.
But then he still gave himself a putt to tie on 18. I think he chained out left from like 40 or 50 feet for the Eagle. But yeah, I was definitely, even coming into the round with how good Eagle's been playing all year, I was like in my head going, Eagle's about to win his 5th Pro Tour of this year. But he was able to keep it close. And like you were saying, it was Ricky, Eagle, Paul, which I think week in and week out, those 3, one of them is most likely winning.
Yeah.
But we also, like I was saying a little bit earlier, had Gannon Buhr coming in 4th, which, friendly reminder, he turned 16 just a few months ago in May.
I was a little frustrated with the commentators because, and first of all, I'm not starting a commentator thing right now. Like, I don't really have, like, it was.
I'm going to make him start that later.
You can start that later, I guess. But I was a little frustrated because they typically latch on to storylines, maybe even a little too much for my taste on the Pro Tour Network sometimes. And the biggest story, like, they were very clearly covering Gannon Buhr through that last round. He just made birdie after birdie. I mean, he must have had 7 or 8 in a row. And they were very, like, kept flashing to him, watching him make his putts. And not one time during that hour in which they were showing every birdie putt he made did they mention that he was only 16. And I was like, that's the most like softball lob toss of a storyline as like a commentator. Like, just say, hey, by the way, this guy's 16 years old and he's like just tearing this course apart right now.
Unless something's changed, I think he still doesn't have his driver's license.
I'm just
like he can't even be driven to the course to slap around these pros.
Gannon is somehow flying under the radar in a sport where it's kind of hard to fly under the radar, especially when you're a young talent. Maybe it's because he's with Prodigy and they're not quite as in the limelight these days. But like Gannon Buhr is 16 and is, what is he, 15th in the world right now?
Yeah, the UDIS World Ranking has him 15th.
Yeah, he's deservedly in 15th. He's consistently placing pretty high up there.
Let's look at his finishes this year. Actually,
he's just stone cold. Like, he does not seem to be phased at all, and he has a very smooth game. Like, Gannon Buhr is a very much like
he's like prime Will Schustrick is what his game looks like.
He's got a smooth putt, throws the disc far effortlessly. He's a future world champion.
So I'm only going to read the Pro Tour finishes for him this year. So the Preserve is not in it yet. So the Preserve was 4th. So just keep that in mind as I read through the rest. Okay. Waco came in 11th. Jonesboro Open 25th. World Championship 33rd. Des Moines 12th, Great Lakes Open 23rd, and then the Preserve 4th.
So his worst finish is 33rd.
And that was at Worlds.
There are not a lot of pros at all on the tour that can say that their worst finish has been 33rd.
His worst finish at a pro tour is 25th.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's very amazing. I mean, he's going to be a problem over the next few years. And that's the other thing, is it's not just him. Yeah. It's just him on the pro tour. Like, he's the one that's kind of going out there right now.
Right.
But there is a lot of players that are similar skill set around his age that give them a few years to where they start touring.
The field's going to get shell-shocked in about 5 years from now. It's going to look a whole lot different than
There's even, what's his name? Is it Vino McKella? Is that his name? I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think he's like 19.
Right.
And he's over in, I believe he's either Estonian or Finnish, and he's filthy.
There's
he's like
a couple Germans that are good
1040 rated, and he's like 18 or 19.
Yeah.
I mean, when the whole field comes together and you give these young guns, the like 16, 17-year-olds, a few years to where they're touring, and you're also giving the top players in the sport a few years to where, like, you know, the Pauls and Rickies are getting, Paul's already in his 30s, Ricky's getting closer, and then you have 16, 17-year-olds that are able to, like, get up towards them.
Yeah.
You know, I think 5 to 7 years from now, we're going to have, Eagle, I think, will still be.
As I'm saying, Eagle is going to have.
Eagle's coming into his prime right now.
Eagle's going to have the toughest prime. He's going to have probably a tougher prime, arguably, than Paul or Rick, because when Paul and Rick were kind of going through their, I mean, they're still in their prime.
They're still in their prime.
But
it's
when
hard
they
to
were,
know what disc golf prime
when they
is.
when they were first into their prime, it was really only each other that they had to beat. Whereas, like Eagle, you know, he might get like to his upper 20s where you could say he's really in his prime, and he might have to fend off all kinds of young talent that Paul and Ricky didn't have to deal with.
Yeah,
and it could be very interesting to see what the landscape. It's very exciting because, like, our field is still so young. I mean, it's just starting to become have a little more parity, and like there's a little more confusion as to who's going to take the win down each week, where it used to be a lot more straightforward. But it's just continuously, and each year as more guys get on tour, it's just going to keep happening.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I want to find, I believe it was on Ultiroad. I didn't know the conversation was going to go this way. But there was an article the other day I saw that was talking, it was some type of crazy stat. Here you go. It might be in this article. For the first time in 7 years, Paul McBeth is the number 1 rated player in the world. I think it's in this article. So January 2014 was the last time McBeth didn't have at least a share of the world's best rating. Is it this article? February 11th? It was more recent than that. Dang it.
What are you looking for?
There was something where it was talking about the dominance of Paul and Ricky, where it was however many years that if like both of them were in it, both of them were in a tournament, they were both, maybe it's this. This is more recent. McBeth and Wysocki hit an unlikely streak. For the first time in their careers, Paul McBeth and Ricky Wysocki have played in 5 consecutive tournaments with both players in the field and without either of them winning. There you go. First time ever.
Wow.
For the first time ever in their careers, they've both been in a field for 5 events without either of them winning.
And that was
OTB Open, Master Cup, Portland Open, Pro Worlds, D-Glow, which went Eagle, Adam Hammes, Eagle, James Conrad, Eagle.
That's crazy.
That's the stat I saw.
That is crazy.
Yeah, so that kind of speaks to what you were saying of they're still in their prime, but they're just getting towards their later part of their prime.
Yeah.
I would say for both of them. It's hard to know what disc golf prime is. They might have 10 more years.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
But even if we have 10 more years, they've been in it for almost 10 years.
And the thing is,
they might be smack in the middle of it.
Yeah, the thing is, too, is Paul might be playing at the same talent level at age 38 as he is right now, but the field is going to get so much better around him that people are probably going to misjudge his prime because they're probably going to think he's out of his prime when really it's just... He's just as good as he was when he's 30.
It's just the
field got so much better. So it's going to be tough to judge.
And one thing to note, too, is Ricky's 3 years younger than Paul.
Ricky still has plenty of time.
But regardless, what I'm saying is, like, for the first, let's just call it 8 years of the Ricky and Paul era, it was literally Ricky and Paul.
Yeah.
Like, there was some people that snuck in and out. You know, at the beginning of it, there was the Will Schustrick, Nico. Then Nico and Will kind of faded off. Nico's kind of come back. Eagle stepped in there. There's been players that have come in and out, but it's been Ricky and Paul. It's been very clearly. This year, and even some last year, as it's come in, now you're starting to get where Adam Hammes can win, Eagle can win, James Conrad can win. Calvin Heimberg can win. All these players can consistently play at the level that Ricky and Paul have been playing at for years.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're speaking to is that's only going to get, the line of who's at the top is only going to get more blurry as this young talent like Gannon comes up. To where when Eagles in his Ricky and Paul era of dominance is going to look a lot different than theirs did.
I think that'd be a fun maybe podcast segment to do is like our 2035 top 20 players in the world.
Oh gosh.
And like go into the future and then just try and like try to predict what it's going to look like. That would be fun. We'll have to do that. Maybe that's a good off-season topic. Yeah, it'd be incredibly subjective because like there's just no telling.
Because a lot of them we probably don't know yet.
Yeah, maybe we'd have to pick a year that was like when Paul and Ricky are around age like their upper 30s, so that they could still be in the mix possibly.
I think we go like 2031, 10 years from now.
10 years from now.
So Paul and Ricky are getting to their 40s.
I think, but if they're in their 40s, it's a little too easy to throw them out. I think we need to make it so Paul's like 38, 39. So like if you could
2028,
you could
2028 top 20.
You could potentially keep him in there, but it's gonna be harder because there's gonna be a lot of guys because like your 16-year-olds are gonna be entering their prime.
Yeah,
essentially like where Eagle is now.
Disc golf is gonna get really fun really quick. I mean, there's no telling what the field's going to look like, even this time next year.
I've just seen too many like college-aged kids that are athletic pick up the sport over the last year and get good so fast.
They get good so fast.
To where if you do that with like athletic kids who are in middle school right now, they have all the time in the world.
Well, even we were talking about it at the Weekly a while ago, where like it feels like the disc golfers as a whole have gotten better. Like not just the pros, but like we used to go to Weeklies and you could pretty much count yourself as like a top 3 to 5 player at a Weekly.
Right.
Like almost like if you were a good disc golfer, you're gonna be in the top 3 to 5. Now I show up to a Weekly and like there's some weeks where I'm happy if I'm in the top 10.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to the level of disc golf because I feel like I might have been a little better a few years ago than I am now, but I haven't gotten that much worse.
Right.
But just everyone else has just kept gotten better. You know what I mean? And I've just kind of I've hit my 970 some wall that I'm just going to be stuck at the rest of my life. But other players just keep passing me. And I think that's just like disc golf in general.
Yeah.
Like the local scene is just a mirror of the pro tour.
I think we got to throw away your pro status so that we can try and get into AM doubles for like US AM doubles.
The issue with that is if I ever play a tournament and I show up in MA1, I mean, I might as well be stoned to death.
What are you talking about? You wouldn't even win.
I know I wouldn't win.
Yeah, so
but when people saw because locally I've won a few pro.
Nobody's gonna come after you.
I guarantee you.
Yeah, but they want
people used to come after me when I stayed in MA1.
What's their argument gonna be after you come in like 4th?
Well, after the tournament, that's a whole different story.
That's what I'm saying.
After I don't even cash at an MA1 event, that's a whole different story. You just gotta let the
dust settle for a while. We've been in retirement for a while now.
That's true. So I think I got to stay in retirement for a little bit, and then I'll email the PDGA like, "Hey, I've been in retirement for over a year. I want to come back as an AM."
Yeah.
Then I can come back.
It's gonna be hard to stay in retirement when like all Heisers rolls around this year.
We're doing coverage and stuff for it.
For all Heisers?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It's on the tour.
So yeah.
Oh, that'd be really easy. All right, never mind. It's gonna be a piece of cake. That's the only event that would have tempted me. So.
Yeah, all Heisers tempts me every year, but I refuse.
We're good. We're gonna stay in retirement through the year.
On the other side of the coin, at the Preserve, we had FPO. It wasn't a thrilling finish.
Kristen
Tatar. Well, I mean, it kind of was thrilling because Kristen Tatar just freaking dominated the field. She won by 10 over Paige. Haley Keene came in 3rd. I think Katrina Allen came in like 5th. Katrina lost by like, I think it was 18. The current world champ lost by like 18 to Kristen. I mean,
Paige and Kat are in trouble.
It's been a while since we've seen a win this big. And what's weird about it is I would have said that Kristen is the 3rd best European.
Coming into the season, that's everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
And like people were all talking about Kristen like as the one people forget about, but like it was all about Evelina and Henna, yeah,
who haven't come over. But so let's just keep that narrative that she was the 3rd best European, which right now in the world ranking she's the 2nd best. Evelina is the number 1 player in the world right now on the UDisc world rankings, and then Henna's I think right below Kat, and then Kristen's kind of in the middle there. But in her time in the U.S., she went 5th at Worlds, 1st at Clash of Canyons, 3rd at Des Moines, 1st at CCR, 1st at D-Glow, 1st at Preserve. The rest of the FPO field, specifically Paige and Kat, they better make sure that this offseason they do not get comfortable.
Yeah, it's gonna get real interesting because we might just start seeing the
There might be some
European
parity, and it's
domination.
just like, oh, Evelina won this weekend. Oh, Henna won this weekend. Oh, Kristen won this weekend.
Right.
Oh, back to Evelina. Oh, back to Evelina. Oh, wow, there's Paige. Like, things could get very interesting very quick.
Imagine if we had another President's Cup right now. That European women's team would be fearsome.
Well, in general, I think the European team would win.
Over the men?
Yeah.
No.
I think so.
What are
The
you-
President's
who-
Cup.
what are you talking
the
about?
President's Cup is mixed men and women. It's just one team. You don't field two different teams.
But they do it. Well, I'm not sure how they ran it last time, but like how many points are the women responsible for? Because they play individual matches.
I'm not sure. I think it might have been 3 and 2.
That's what I'm saying. Because I don't think the
Three
men
men.
aren't going to drop a match.
I don't know. You got Simon, Vino.
Oh, that's not true. Yes, that's right. They do have a couple guys. I mean, it could happen.
Seppo,
We need to have another President's
Seppo
Cup.
Payu, Vino.
We haven't seen
Kella,
Seppo in forever.
Simon. There's a lot of Europeans that we're just forgetting about because we haven't seen them. Albert Tam.
Would Simon still be considered European, like a
Yeah.
European player? Okay, even though he lives in the U.S.
He lives in the U.S., but his citizenship's still German, I
Okay.
believe.
The way in other sports, the way international competition works is you are allowed to play. Like in soccer is the only example I really know. Is you are always allowed to play for the national team of either the place you were born in, always, or the place you have citizenship in. Because some guys, like there's a guy Diego Costa, for example. He was born in Brazil. He had citizenship in Spain because he played there for a long time. So he played for the Spanish national team. Then there's been other examples like that. So you always have those options.
Yeah. I don't know how the President's
Disc golf,
Cup.
I'm sure, isn't even structured
Yeah, I
that
was gonna say,
way.
the President's Cup. would
Simon can just
let
play on the
Simon-
European team. Yeah.
They would just let Simon,
They need
regardless
to bring
of
that back.
officials. But yeah.
Team match play events are like the most electric things in golf.
Yeah.
Whenever the Ryder Cup is on, it is awesome. So cool.
Yeah, the President's Cup, I'm excited for whenever that's able to make a comeback. But the UDIS World Rankings right now have Evelina beating Paige 56% of the time currently. But I think that's a
tough.
little skewed because we haven't even seen Evelina over here.
Right.
So it's tough to know if that would make that number be more in Paige's favor or it could make it more in Evelina's favor. It could be more like 60 to 70%. There's no way to know.
Paige is just not hanging in there right now.
Paige is having, honestly, the entire USA FPO field is pretty lucky this year that they're able to capitalize on the boom of the sport
Right.
and the building of their brand without Evelina, Henna, and Kristen.
Yeah, because you imagine how much less that like Paige and Kat, for example, would have earned from finishes this year if there were two more killers in the field.
Well, imagine even just the market share of fandom if you have, like, let's just say that Evelina and Henna and Kristen dominated this year. Let's just say they were over here and they dominated. And you have the boom of disc golf where it's blowing up. People are becoming fans of FPO players. They're going to naturally go to the ones at the top.
Sure.
So there would be a chance that Paige and Kat could have been like the third or fourth best players in the world versus right now 1 and 2. So they're very fortunate and hopefully they know it and it like propels them to make sure next season they are still 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But I think they're very fortunate that this year the way things worked out, and it kind of sucks for Evelina and Henna on the other side of that coin because Kristen was able to get over here and at least show people like, hey, I still exist. I can still win by 10 strokes over the current FPO field. Evelina and Henna unfortunately haven't been able to do that. Yeah. I've heard a rumor that they might be able to come, which I don't know. This was before the new surge of COVID and stuff like that. So there was a rumor that they were going to be able to make it over for U.S. Women's, the Women's National Championship. Sorry. I don't know if that's still a possibility.
That would be really
or not,
cool.
But it's definitely something that will be a storyline as the off season comes around and goes on, because that's definitely something that we're going to have to look at into next year. Another thing that happened this past week, actually it was on Monday, just a few days ago, was disc golf was on ESPN 2 yet again. Portland Open aired on Monday during a 2-hour primetime slot. I thought the coverage and commentary was pretty good, and they did a good job showing the storylines of the event to an audience that potentially had never seen disc golf before.
Yeah.
But I think we also should continue to have conversations of like where they could have improved. So hopefully you hear coverage was good. I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I watched the whole 2 hours, but I wanted to reach out to Twitter first and say like, hey, what did everyone think? So all I said was, what did you think of the ESPN2 coverage? And this is what some of the people said. We had M White XX say, very solid. Philo/Terry did a really good job. The camera work was great, and the course, though not the best on tour, showed well on screen. Did a good job painting the lead card as markable characters as well. I believe he meant to say marketable, but I just wrote it in case I don't understand the word markable.
You're probably right.
At WBC Saint said it was good. That being said, it did a massive disservice to the FPO as it just felt weird how they covered it. Also, it would have been nice for folks new to disc golf if they had some explanation for the common terms they were throwing around. At Ben Eloship said, I thought it was well put together for TV. Pace felt lively enough to hold interest. FPO is odd. Not much drama for TV product, I guess. Maybe better to not have it than to shoehorn it in. I don't know. Commentary was good. Maybe could have been more thoughtful of less familiar viewers. So there seemed to be kind of 2 points that were common throughout all the responses I got. One was that the way they showcased FPO was kind of odd. And 2, the commentary being towards new players.
Right.
So let's hit the first one first. The FPO was a common theme. And I think I agree. The way they covered it was kind of weird. It felt like they didn't know what they wanted to do with the FPO coverage because they had like music behind it.
Yeah.
Almost like it was like a highlight flashback type thing. Mm-hmm. But then they were doing commentary over it and like focusing on it like they were trying to make it a key part of the coverage.
Yeah, it was super weird.
It kind of just made it feel awkward when the FPO would come on. It was like you didn't know what they wanted you to like. Are we parking in and like focusing on this? Or is this just something they're just kind of showing us and then pulling it away?
It is a tough job whenever they're doing. They have these very strict 2-hour time slots. Which when you say 2 hours, it's actually a lot less than 2 hours.
Yeah,
because of all the commercial time. I mean, you might be talking about an hour and 20 minutes. So it is very tricky, and I understand what they're trying to go with like the highlight package because I think they're thinking in their minds. That's going to showcase the FPO the most, like to show.
Well, it's also this tournament wasn't like super exciting finish.
Right. And it's difficult too because they're very clearly trying to tell a story with the dramatic finish that was going on in MPO. So they don't want to like cut away from it super heavy and lose the momentum. So, I mean, it's the same problem they run into with live streams sometimes where they're cutting back and forth. But, yeah, I mean, it's just, I think they're just trying to work out the kinks. As far as the commentary thing, my working theory with disc golf coverage on sports networks, such as we had the CBS one and now the ESPN ones that have gone on, is that they are just testing the waters. They're trying a new strategy for a different broadcast. Now, obviously, it may just appear that way because different people have been running these broadcasts, whereas Jomez has done previous ones. This one was run by a different...
Both of the ESPN ones were overseen by the same company.
Right, okay.
Jomez did the CBS.
Well, so there was a slightly different feel between both these ESPN ones, so maybe my theory is somewhat correct. But I'm thinking that they're just trying different strategies for how to do the best disc golf broadcast to retain viewers, and maybe that's retaining viewers from outside of disc golf. There's not really a good way to measure that because they can't really tell, who's watching. But maybe they're just doing that based off of demographics. I don't know. Maybe they can see viewers based on if those viewers are usual ESPN watchers. There's probably more data than we even realize. But I'm thinking with the commentary thing, we've seen other broadcasts do the kind of the route of explaining terminology to disc golfers. I think the problem is it comes off, though it is helpful, I think it comes off a little unprofessional. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, whenever I watch sports that I'm very new to, one of my favorite things to do is to hear terminology that I don't understand and look it up and learn about the sport. And that way you're learning about the sport in your own way. And if you actually care to learn about it, you can just, it's one Google search away. What is a hyzer? Boom. And you know in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a huge problem. I think for those who actually care, it's too easy. The access to information about the sport is too easy to find. And honestly, guess what? You get somebody Googling about disc golf terminology, it's a rabbit hole, and they just all of a sudden they're scrolling through YouTube videos about disc golf. So like it actually might be better to get people to do some of the legwork on their own. And I just think, especially with the way the coverage started with the whole like talking about the course and everything, I think they're just kind of, I don't think this is the right move the way they started the coverage. I think they needed to get into the action sooner. But I think they're kind of just like, hey, we bought this, we invested in this product, we invested in this contract to run all these events. Let's not just run it the same way every time and see what happens.
Figure out what's going on.
Yeah, let's try a little bit of a different strategy each time and see which one works the best. That way we'll have the most data as possible.
Yeah. Now, I want to just quickly say one final thing on the FPO point, and then I'll explain what I'm thinking with commentary. I just think FPO would have been better received if they would have fully committed to one or the other. Like, I think if they would have fully committed to the highlight side and stuck it there, so because the audience, I felt like, just didn't know how to react,
Yeah.
or if they would have fully committed to the coverage side. I think it would have been better received if they'd fully committed to one or the other. I think the reason it felt kind of awkward and didn't play well on screen is it was kind of like this weird in between. Like you didn't know what to do when you're focusing. Newer players, people who've never watched disc golf before, probably didn't even notice it. I think it was just us watching it with an eye of like wanting the best foot forward for disc golf. That stuff like that kind of stood out. But as far as the commentary goes, I think that there's a happy medium where they could say something like along the lines of like, let's say that a pro throws a big hyzer.
Yeah.
Right? The commentary could have been more intentional, saying like, oh, that was a massive left to right pushing hyzer, or right to left pushing
so
hyzer.
adding a little context.
So you like can understand what's going on, but not saying what a great hyzer. And if you're wondering what a hyzer is,
or even saying like on a hyzer angle, so that they can just really make the assumption that that must be a hyzer angle on a disc.
But like, I think you can add like little descriptive words that don't pull away from the professionalism, where you're not sitting there giving the Webster dictionary definition of a hyzer and anhyzer.
Right.
But you're able to add in a little bit of what the disc is doing because of the hyzer or the angle, something like that. Like you could even say like, oh, it looks like he put like, it looks like 20 to 30 degrees of hyzer on that shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's where people at home can understand what's going on and might be able to put two and two together without ever having to Google it, but you're also not holding someone's hand and walking them through it, which can kind of come across as condescending sometimes. If you're just sitting there trying to watch sports and you're like, and let me show you what a hyzer is. You're like, am I watching a kid's show or am I watching sports?
Right, exactly.
So I think there's a happy medium.
Sports viewers don't want to feel like they don't know about a sport they're watching.
No, they want to.
They want to be sitting there feeling like the expert. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think the right way to go about it is like, let's look at our flashcards for hyzer. Like I think the right way to go about it is just adding a slightly more descriptive words that like even disc golf fans wouldn't really
figure it out.
Yeah, just let them kind of piece it together in their head. Of like, oh, that way if like you're sitting next to your wife and your wife's like, what's a hyzer? You're like, oh, it's a right to left pushing shot.
It's clearly the ones that are angled, with the left side of the disc down.
Yeah, exactly. But with that being said, it's time to jump to the fan favorite segment, Trevor's Trivia. What do you got for me today?
Okay, so it's been a while since we've done any Prices Right stuff, and the disc market has just been bustling lately. It's been absolutely crazy. So I decided we're going to do a little bit different this time, make it a little bit easier than before. Instead of trying to guess exact prices, we're going to do this a little higher or lower style.
Ooh.
So I'm going to throw out a disc. I'm going to give you a price, and then I will ask you the question of higher or lower.
Nice.
And that will be your goal, basically. The way to think about this is it's almost like if you have this disc in your hand and you don't know anything about the market, what would you list it for, and are you going to lose money or gain money based on what the actual price is? So think about it that way. Put yourself in those shoes.
I'm awful at these games, but I'm going to try my best.
The first disc is the D-Glow Z Hades in brand new condition. These discs have been very hot on eBay. The price I'm going to give you, should you list it, for $80.
The price in my head was $75. So I was hoping you were going to say like 120 or like 50. So I could be like, I think it's
$80
80's like right where
lower.
I was going. I'm going to say higher. I think it could push close to 100.
That's correct. $90.
Nice.
And that's about average. I've seen some go for even higher than that.
Crowd loves it.
Very good, very good. The next disc on our list is the Discmania Meta Tilt. New. This is a very relevant disc.
Okay.
$95.
Lower. I think I want to say they're in I would say they're in the 60 to 80 price range.
$85 is about.
Let's go. Maybe I am good at this game.
You're doing well so far. It's going to start getting a lot more interesting though. Those were the two
I love higher or lower, and you're like within like $10 of the selling price. So I got to guess the selling price.
Well, I want to keep it reasonably close.
No, yeah, I'm game for this.
The next disc,
I understand the rules of this one.
Is a first run CE Eagle brand new.
Oh, I feel like these are criminally underpriced.
$90.
It's got to be lower. It's lower.
It's higher. $100.
Okay, well that makes me feel better. It makes me feel worse for during the game, but better that
That's crazy to me. A first run CE Eagle. Do you people even know what you're passing up on?
Well, I'm just
that disc is not. It's not just like
that should be like a $250 disc.
Yeah, forget the plastic. It's history. Like it's brand new. It's first run.
I was just scared that because I've seen some CE stuff go for like $35. I'm like, what are you doing? So I was scared
Man,
that I was
if only I
scared
had
that
a time
was
machine. The next disc is a pre-flight, pre-Avery Star Destroyer in brand new condition.
That's tough.
$200.
Oh man. Oh no. I haven't heard the term like 2-line destroyer, pre-flight number destroyer.
This big and brand new pre-flight
pin destroyer. I haven't heard those terms used in the disc golf world in so long.
Yeah.
People just the destroyer hype train has left the station. I feel like
$200.
So I'm gonna say lower, but it should be 250 plus.
It is 250 on the
Okay,
dot.
thank goodness. Maybe I should just have more faith in disc golf community.
I wouldn't have blamed you after that last one with the CE Eagle. This is probably one of the more interesting ones.
Well,
here.
the other thing too is like Avery destroyers or pre-Avery destroyers, they all fly different.
Yeah.
So you're not just buying like historic disc. You're buying the only destroyer that flies like that.
Please don't throw it.
I would throw it. I wouldn't pay $250 and then throw it. But if I got it for like 30, I'd throw it.
All right, the next one, this is pretty interesting. This is an MVP first run Ion X out. There was only 50 of these made, and your price is $380.
See, I don't know anything about the MVP market because 380 to me sounds insane. But after James Conrad winning Worlds, maybe that's right. I'm gonna say lower.
It's higher.
Holy
$450.
How is that going for more than a first run CE Eagle?
Oh my gosh, that's
I guess
ridiculous.
there's
only
50
50 of them made, but still seems pretty steep. And you think that's steep? That's nothing because our last two discs are absurd.
Oh gosh.
The next one is a 2020 Las Vegas Challenge Sexton Firebird, a smoky gray color. This one was,
These
and
things
your
go
price
for so
is
much.
$850.
These go for so much, but the question is, do they go for that much or do they go for more? Because I feel like when they first came out, I saw some going for like 1,000 plus. But is this a recent listing?
Pretty recent, yeah.
So then, like, has it come down?
What year is this?
2020.
Last year.
Last year's.
Yeah, it's like a black smoky. They're sick. They're so sick. They're not $1,000 sick, but people have paid that much. I'm gonna say higher. I'm gonna say people are still paying $1,000 for them.
Lower.
Dang it, Hunter! You suck at this.
$800.
I
will say
that is still a lot.
Sexton
though.
Firebirds. There are 2016 runs that had like a slight halo to them, and they're going for 1,000 plus.
Yeah,
like that.
Oh,
if
to go
you
back,
have a Firebird, get rid of it right now because there's
got
no way they're going to stay this expensive.
I had my hands on 2015 Sextons, and I was throwing them like nothing because they weren't big back then. They were like just getting big.
I also saw on eBay before we get their last disc, there was a smoky crystal raptor with our certificate, the foundation certificate of authentic. $300.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Frick.
Yeah.
Right after they came out and sold out, you were able to get them for like $70.
So this last disc,
I have a
think
2020 Sexton Firebird, but it's just 2021, so it's not that exciting.
Wait 10 years.
Yeah.
This is or not even that long.
Wait 3
maybe
years.
5 years.
Well, it's pretty used. I used to get it.
Still. I had a used one. I gave it to someone. It was a used 2015 or 2016. I could sell it for like $80-$90 right now.
Wow.
But I gave it to someone. I remember who it was.
The last disc is kind of funny because of a previous podcast, but the last disc is a Castaplast K2 Berg first run, and your price is $900.
Oh, no.
I mean, if that doesn't sound overhyped, I don't know what does. $900? Is that just like one idiot paid that, or is that like a going rate?
There's not many of these out there, so it's tough to say.
I'm too mad to answer. I'm gonna say lower. My faith in
Higher.
humanity.
$1,000.
What? Why?
$1,000. Somebody
Why?
paid for one. It's anytime you have a niche brand like Castaplast, like the collectors are going to be no joke about it.
Well, that's how the MVP disc was so much, was because
But that at least
people
makes
who
sense
like
right now.
MVP are like really like
It's a
MVP.
But the
niche.
thing that makes sense
Vibram?
right now because there's
You're
a
right.
reason.
Vibram is
Someone
super
just won
hot.
Worlds throwing their discs.
If you got any Vibram laying around, that's
Vibram
tough.
also makes sense. It's not made
out.
anymore.
It's not made anymore, and it sells hot on eBay.
Vibram is silly to me.
What a Berg.
How do you
Vibram
guys
was pretty-
feel about Vibram?
It was very
I've never
silly.
thrown it. I've never thrown it.
Here's my
felt
fondest
like it
memory
was
of
very
Vibram.
silly.
I think it was like a second or third tournament ever in disc golf back when I was still pretty good for my age. I was playing an intermediate and I smoked everybody except for one guy who would have, I think, came second in open when he was playing an
He's
intermediate.
always that guy.
And
He's
he
always that guy.
was putting with these super like flubby wubby Omega whatever.
Omega Super Softs.
Well, no, that's a Millennium Disc. They were Vibram putters, and he putted them all over me. And I lost to this grown man as like a 15-year-old, and he should not have been an intermediate, and it broke my heart. So that's my fondest memory of Vibram.
So you must hate the company.
Yeah, it was not a good time for me. And after that, I never had a chance of winning anything ever again. So there we have it.
You won the Gifford Pinchot.
That was my first tournament ever, the Gifford Pinchot.
Oh, you won your first tournament ever?
Yeah, it was like 16 under boys division. So it wasn't that, I played like 4 people. It wasn't that difficult to win. Dang. But that I should have won an intermediate there, and yeah, that happened.
That's ruthless.
The next one I played after that was like PA States. It's a murder. Got killed. There's this course in Pennsylvania. It's called like it was called like the Wolf Pack was like their club, and it was like something Creek. I think it might be like, or no, it's Coyote something, I think. Coyote Hills or Coyote Creek or something. And it is a monster course. Like I was playing like 1,200 foot uphill par 5s. Brutal. Some guy got like attacked by bees in the rough. He came running out like screaming, and like this is just kind of event that it was. And it finished with like a monsoon towards the end.
I think we got a lot more to talk about on this podcast. So I think we talk some of our fondest tournament memories. Because I've got quite a few stories on the Bogey Bro banter.
Oh gosh.
I think I was planning on the Bogey Bro banter to explain. I'll still explain what happened to the new putters I put in my bag. But I'll explain that, and then I think we talk through our fondest tournament memories, because I think there's got to be some great stories within the three of us.
I've got a few.
I've got some that I will never forget. But
I can think of one from a practice round at Nationals.
Let's jump back into Twitter. Let's jump back into Twitter. You can get a lot of podcast topics from Twitter nowadays.
Well, yeah, especially when Brodie is down sick.
Yeah, so Brodie's got COVID, unfortunately. He went home for a week, and Kelsey had it when he got home, and then he ends up having it. So hopefully he's hoping to be back by, I believe it's Idlewild. Will be like right at where, if he's feeling better, he'd be good to travel, according to the doctors. So hopefully he's back by then. But what it's leading to right now is Brodie that's just laying around the house on his phone.
An absolute tirade on Twitter.
And so
right
he's
now.
just having himself some good times on Twitter. So the first thing that started everything was he just posted a poll asking if you would watch live if the commentary was better. That was his poll, because that is fair. You hear a lot of people say that, like, I'm never watching live because the commentary sucks.
Right.
I've heard that take so many times. But then there's also some comments elsewhere directed towards the commentary. A lot of comments on Twitter after that thread directed towards the commentary. And a lot of people directing their comments directly at Nate Doss. And whenever stuff starts coming at people, it immediately goes from being okay criticism of their commentary to just you suck as a person, and it just starts crossing a line. But Nate Doss posted this on his Facebook saying, "Crossroads sometimes leave you thinking, what direction should I go? After a fantastic weekend on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, I've received an abnormal amount of negative feedback for my performance on the live coverage. It has always been my goal to make the live show an enjoyable experience for all. I absolutely love getting the opportunity to talk about a sport that I spent my entire life trying to perfect. To those of you who support the Disc Golf Network with your hard-earned dollars, thank you, and know that I'm doing my best to get better each and every show. For the people who have attacked my character, asked me to be fired, called me a loser, or consider me the worst commentator in disc golf, know that the things you say do hurt. If the only way I can get better in your minds is to completely stop, I can't help you there. I'll admit that I get excited sometimes and go overboard, but I know it comes from my love of the players and the game they play. To everyone out there who has been told they're no good, know that it's not true. As long as you give your best effort in everything you do, you should stand tall and be proud. The first time I was told I was no good was 8 years old by a fellow disc golfer. I never forgot that moment, and without people like that, I would never become a world champion. To all my supporters, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and to all my haters, thank you for giving me a reason to be great." So,
poor guy. I feel so bad for the poor guy. I like Nate Doss.
I think we mainly hear these comments directed towards Nate Doss when it's the combination of Nate Doss and Jamie Thomas.
Yeah.
And I think the main reason, it's not because Nate Doss is a bad commentator, and it's not because Jamie Thomas is a bad commentator, but I think it's because when you put them together, they just lack some type of chemistry, I think is what it boils down to.
Yeah,
they don't have a good flow back and forth, and I think they also both struggle in the same area of weakness when it comes to commentary, which is the over exaggeration, over explain, like overstate type of the
Here's something that people are not considering. First of all, I just want to say that the hard truth of commentary and being a commentator in sports is that it is a very scrutinized position. You can look at the best guy, the guys who are considered like the highest paid, like the Joe Bucks of the world, who are doing, Sunday football for Fox. That guy is hated by tons of people, but he still has a job because, the minority can be the loudest. So no matter what, you're always going to be heavily scrutinized in a commentator position. There's very few guys that are like just beloved by everybody. And
they're normally not the color commentators.
Right. It's
normally the play-by-play who you don't really have to put your opinion in.
Yeah, the color commentary guys are even tougher, and those guys that do become beloved by everybody are working in their job for 50 years because of that reason. But the other thing I want to say that is kind of a point that nobody really thinks about, and that is, I think that Nate Doss's enthusiasm only sticks out like a sore thumb because of the way that the audio is run. And the way that the fact that there's less noise in disc golf than there's in golf, because some of the best calls in golf, the commentator gets loud, but he's almost drowned out by the crowd roaring. For some reason, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's not as many mics that are hot on the course during disc golf events. But Nate Doss will start getting excited, and it's like he's just screaming into a microphone in your ear. Like you cannot hear you couldn't hear chains rattle, you couldn't hear anything. It's all you can hear. Another thing is the crowds aren't nearly as loud. So yeah, while I agree he can be into a little bit much sometimes, I think he's being penalized and hurt quite a bit by the fact that there's nothing else to drown his voice. Like there's nothing else to add to the environment. Like even like when we had the James Conrad shot, it's like it went in, you heard the crowd roar, and it cut for a second while you heard the commentators come in and then cut back.
It's almost like they have on, I don't know what they're streaming.
It's like the channel cuts out when one of them is cutting in.
Like for instance, on OBS, just stick with me, this will make sense. On OBS, which is what I stream with when I'm streaming video games.
Yeah.
There's a setting I have turned on that turns the volume of the video game and everything else going on down when my voice comes through.
Right.
Yeah, it's called like ducking or something.
It's almost like they have that turned on for the commentators.
It's just, even you can have that on to some degree, but it's just not quite.
Well, I don't think
correctly.
You should.
We should just have somebody monitoring the audio, like a full-time person just monitoring the audio.
But like in the moment of James Conrad's the shot,
right,
the audio of the crowd shouldn't go down. There's moments in golf where I'm trying to think, I only watch like major golf tournaments, but there was one, it might have been when Phil most recently won or when Tiger won the Masters or something like that, where the crowd was so loud, I could barely hear the commentators, but that helped add to the moment.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Because like it's drawing me in. I'm like, I don't even care what the commentator's saying. The commentator's yelling, the crowd's yelling, like you just feel the moment. In disc golf, you're right, you just kind of sit back like, why am I hearing Nate Doss going, oh, in my ear during that moment?
Crowd sound is very, I think, underlooked potentially in disc golf, and maybe it's because they don't have the resources. But when I worked in Division I athletics, I didn't do anything with sound, but I was usually there early and watched them set up sound. And they put a ton of focus into where they're placing mics to get the crowd noise, because crowd noise is huge.
It's everything.
Whenever we were watching sporting events during COVID, the one thing that made it not as special wasn't even necessarily the presence of the fans, but it was the noise of the fans. That's why they literally made fake crowd noise for games.
The NBA had like fake chants.
It's because it is so important to the consumption of an event. It adds to the production value immensely.
Even heard some people in the Olympics say like, I feel like I don't have a chance because my only shot was the adrenaline from the crowd.
Right. And I just want to say, this is something that I almost forgot about, but stuck out to me big time. This is the biggest mistake that the live coverage is making during this past event, is they are cutting to replay too fast. What would happen is a huge putt would go in, you barely hear the crowd start to roar, and then boom, it's cut. And you'd go straight to replay, and by the time they got out of replay, the crowd wasn't making any more noise. I did not get to hear a single crowd roar because they were cutting straight to replay, and I understand that they were trying to make sure they got to replay
before the putt,
but just wait until everybody's done putting.
Yeah, and then go back.
While
they're walking.
But it was awful. I was like, they did it just time after time, and I'm like, I want to hear the crowd roar.
I also heard, and I thought this was a pretty awful take. I also heard someone say, well, why on earth are they like trying to talk so quiet? Like you're in a booth miles and miles away from the course.
Yeah.
It's to add to the experience.
Yeah, you're adding to the effect that you're there.
The whole point of live and the whole reason like it's supposed to work is it's supposed to make you at home feel like you're at the event.
Yeah.
So you need the commentators when the crowd's quiet. The commentator needs to be kind of quiet and be like, all right, and we have Paul McBeth here lining up for his 25-footer.
Yeah.
And let the moment happen. Because if you're here with your friend and you're standing at USDGC watching Paul on hole 17 putting, that's the level you and your friend be talking
Because
at.
if the energy level doesn't match between what's going on the course and what's going on in the booth, there's just a big disconnect.
I think that's a great key point is right now, because of the like audio mixing, it feels like Nate Doss's energy doesn't match what's going on the course when a lot of times it does.
Right.
But since you're not there, you haven't, the coverage hasn't done a good enough job making you feel that energy. So when Nate Doss brings that energy that he's feeling, then it feels like you're just getting hit with Nate Doss.
Yeah, because
like, why?
That
is a
energy
really
that
good
he
point.
brings is praised in other sports for commentators. They're like some of the biggest names in commentary, you know, like Dick Vitale, for example, in college basketball. Dude is constantly freaking out. But it's because college basketball is so noisy. And I get that golf isn't that noisy, but during the big moments it is.
Yeah.
It certainly is. And our gallery sizes aren't laughable at this point. Like they make noise coming down that stretch. Like I said, if I'd been able to actually hear it for longer than a millisecond.
That's a great point.
Like that was really frustrating me. Those replay cuts, it were brutal. Or at least just flash the replay and keep the crowd noise and just give me the replay in silent because I don't really need to.
You don't need to hear.
That's what I was gonna say. Let the video, like the replay clip, play over the audio, the live audio.
That's the other thing. When they cut to replay, it's not even like we got to hear the roar and replay. They were playing them silent and just talking over them.
Well, some of them they play the slow motion replay where you hear the chain like.
Yeah,
definitely
that's the noise
should
I'm
not
trying
do
to
that.
do.
You
know what I'm
definitely
saying?
should. I understood it. You definitely shouldn't do that.
Yeah, but
not you. I mean them.
Them. Yeah.
A little live update.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Brodie just texted us and saying he woke up. He was starting to feel better. He woke up feeling pretty bad. So Idlewild starting to look a little iffy. But the point I was going to make on commentary, that was my solution. Well, not really my solution, but I just think when you put Jamie Thomas with Philo, people have loved it. When you put Terry Miller with Nate Doss or Ian Anderson with Nate Doss, you hear a lot less complaints.
Yeah.
So I think that a big part of it, the sound engineering didn't even cross my mind. That is probably the biggest problem. That's a great point. Yeah. But the point I saw was the flow that they get with other people. And for some reason, I think Jamie Thomas and Nate Doss just don't flow well together. They might be best friends. They might be great friends. But for some reason, they just don't have like a on-camera chemistry, it feels like.
Yeah, honestly, it's not even when it comes to finding personalities that work on air between play-by-play and color commentary. It doesn't matter necessarily if you have good chemistry with that person. It certainly helps, but it's kind of just like how your personalities work together and your timing. It's really what it comes down to. I mean, that's just what it is, really.
Second thing that got a lot of people going on Brodie's Twitter was disc names. So somehow Brodie's back on this kick of the commentators not saying the specific mold, such as a buzz, a heat.
There is a lot to unpack in this idea.
But rather a more general terminology like a stable mid or an overstable fairway. Now, the reasoning from what I've gathered from him is twofold. Number one, saying the specific mold gives free advertising to the manufacturers, and he is proposing that giving this free advertising could potentially be stopping some of these manufacturers from advertising on the Pro Tour since they get so much for free. Secondary reason is a certain mold isn't actually that descriptive a lot of times. For instance, back in the day, every Innova Pro threw the most sick shots you've ever seen with a freaking champ T-Bird. And yeah, I might sound salty because I am. Because it would flip up for him and it would ride dead straight forever. And what do? I buy a T-Bird. Yeah. And what does it do? It flies like a 7-speed Firebird. Because just saying it was a T-Bird wasn't enough.
Right.
Because it wasn't just a T-Bird. It was a T-Bird that's been in Philo's bag for 16 years.
Yeah.
It's been beat up to fly beautifully. Whereas if they would have said a neutral flying fairway, this is Brodie's point, then I might have ended up buying a Leopard 3 or a TL that would have flown like that beat up T-Bird. Mm-hmm. So the question to be asked here, is it actually that big of a deal? Does it really matter?
This is a very interesting topic because I understand where he's coming from, because in golf, you definitely do not hear a manufacturer's name would not be uttered a lot. He's hitting driver, he's hitting 3-wood, he's hitting wedge, he's hitting that. Even if it's some kind of more specialized club, you might hear guys say, oh, he's hitting that new driving iron that he has in his bag. But you're not going to hear any mention of TaylorMade, Titleist, nothing. You will not hear it. And like even when they do very specific calls to equipment, like when it comes to a putter, they stay away from it. It's almost like it's policy, because that goes to like that business point with the free advertising. Now, Do I think that disc golf companies are really sitting down and thinking, because the sport has always kind of been this way, I don't think any of them are actually thinking, we're getting free advertising. Why would we spend more money? I don't think disc golf is there at a business sense.
Well, I think the question more so is if that free advertising disappeared,
right?
Would it cause it?
I don't think yet. Maybe down the road, once companies are like, as the sport continues to develop, that thought might like enter their mind. But that point when he made that, I was like, that's a really smart point, but I don't think anybody's even thinking about that, because I sure wasn't even like, that didn't even cross my mind.
Where I think it comes in more and where we might start seeing more and more issues is a lot of manufacturers own events.
This is true.
So if you look at Las Vegas Challenge, I don't know if you remember this, but back then there was a point where the Pro Tour and Las Vegas Challenge butted heads because Innova was telling the commentators you can only say Innova mold names.
Yeah, that's where.
And then the Pro Tour was like, well, no, like they tell them they can say whatever. Because I remember they're like round 1 on live, they were saying just like overstable fairway or whatever for everyone but Innova. Then you get to Innova and they would say T-Bird.
Yeah.
Then come round 2 and 3, they were able to say Paul's throwing his Onyx, Paul's throwing his what. That's where I think things could get a little bit iffy, because that, to me, that almost proves Brodie's point that people are thinking about it, because Innova's thought about it.
Innova was thinking about it. That's true. That's a good point.
Clearly, maybe if Innova thought of it, you might think other manufacturers are.
And where it gets tricky for me is I think 100%, disc call out or not, it is always more helpful to say this is his more flippy mid or this is his more overstable mid rather than this is a buzz, because what does that buzz do for him? Who knows?
There's buzzes that are death. There are buzzes that are super overstable,
right?
And then there's buzzes that are flippier than a soul.
I think as a manufacturer that could actually mislead customers.
That's why I refuse to put a T-Bird in my bag, for one reason only.
Right.
I probably would have loved the T-Bird if I would have bought the T-Bird expecting it to be a T-Bird. But I bought it expecting it to be a Leopard 3.
Yeah.
And then I threw it and I was like, the T-Bird sucks.
I do. It is interesting though to like disc golf, I think is unique from golf in the sense that the different disc names and molds and the collectability of them, it is a different aspect to our sport than golf has, because guys collect golf clubs and like I'm familiar with that market a little bit, but it's just a little bit.
The other thing is a disc is a ball and a club combined.
Right. Yeah.
Where
disc golf is just a bit unique. I don't.
That's the point where there's certain things, I've always said this, where we need to be looking at golf and pulling, but then there's other parts where I don't know if that lines up, because you can't really compare a golf club, because a golf club has the head, the loft. Brodie was trying to explain to me blades versus set in whatever on irons. The
line. Well, so basically,
of a shaft.
He was asking you, like if two guys. He was basically proposing the question, and he texted our group and he said, "Trevor, don't answer," because he knew that I would just like.
I didn't even answer at all,
but he was saying if John Rahm, a professional golfer, and Dustin Johnson, another professional golfer, if they both hit a 7-iron, are the commentators going to say anything other than they just hit a 7-iron, or is it the same thing? Even though both of them play for different manufacturers, and it's true, they won't. Now, 7-irons are not always the same loft.
No,
between companies they vary. So certain companies. One of their marketing tactics in golf is they will release irons saying they go the furthest ever, and really it's because that 7-iron you just hit is really the loft of a 6-iron. So they do sneaky stuff like that. But generally speaking, the golf clubs are not known by their name as much. Like you have to be a little more into golf to really know the golf club market.
That's not even what I was saying though. What I'm saying is the loft affects it, right? The depth of the grooves affects it.
Yeah.
The golf club in and of itself is way more complicated than a disc.
Yeah.
To where when you take, so like when you have a T-Bird, I'm gonna keep using T-Bird. When you have a T-Bird, T-Bird's a T-Bird, right?
Right.
But then in order to accomplish something else, you can't change the way, you can obviously change the way you're throwing the disc and you can beat it in and do stuff like that. But then that's why there has to be so many different molds.
Right.
Because it's not as simple as you're just affecting like, you change from
and I think too, with disc golf, it's about hand feel is the biggest difference, because guess what? A golf club, the shaft, you can choose what grips you like and you can put them on any club, and the weight of the club might feel a bit different, but I mean there's even ways around that. Guys use like lead tape on their clubs to make them feel heavier and stuff, and you can get weighted shafts and whatnot, but you can pretty much make irons feel the same. Now there's feel difference when you hit the ball too, but I think disc golf, the reason there's such a need for molds is I don't think it's a disc golf is a business. Like golf is literally recycles the same technology every year to make another $500 driver that hits just as good as the one they came out with 6 years ago. So, they've already been doing that. I don't think there's a problem with disc golf coming out with new molds that may fly similar, because it's a business at the end of the day. So and we're all going to get excited about them, and every once in a while stuff does come out that is very much new and revolutionary, and there'll be more innovation in our sport too, as far as plastic is concerned, especially. So I'm very much on the fence of this, because I think there are really good arguments both ways. I would prefer, if they're going to do disc callouts though, I would prefer if they did their research a little bit, and added in, this is his flippier putter. I also think that they get used excessively. They do. If a guy throws a hyzer with a driver, I do not need to know what he just did it with, because that does not surprise me. If a guy throws a 400-foot hole and it was a putter, then you say, oh, by the way, that was a putter, because then it's interesting context. But I don't need to know on every shot. I just want to know when it's if you're the commentator and you know all the discs and something surprises you, then talk about it.
Yeah.
But if Paul throws a straight buzz on a straight buzz hole, who cares?
Yeah.
Duh. I want to know when he does something that is a bit shocking.
Yeah. The second point I can definitely see mattering is in relation to it can be misleading to the consumer.
Yeah.
Saying Paul threw Onyx, and I watch it flip up and fly amazing.
Right.
But they just leave out the part that's been in his bag for 4 years and it's beat up or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? That part I can see mattering, where it would have been better to just say a neutral fairway, so I don't go buy an Onyx and expect it to fly like that. The first point, though, of the free advertising, that's impossible to know. The only way to know it is if it actually was fully committed, and then to measure the ad spend of the different companies. But this disc golf's so young that there's so many, if you want to call them problems, there's so many problems like this that we just don't know the answer.
Right.
Because it's always only been one way, so we don't know, if we take away the free advertising part, will it actually result in more ad spend? There's no way to know.
I do think, though, it does come with disc golf figuring out how the sport works as a business, because I will say, in the golf world, if you had commentators calling out brand names on clubs, there would be tons of money that needed to be chucked around, or people would be furious, because that is a very expensive thing. If you see Dustin Johnson hitting a driver, and Jim Nance is like, oh yeah, by the way, that's the new sim driver from TaylorMade, that would absolutely sell hundreds of drivers.
Yeah, because in that scenario, you if you're a different company, you better hope Callaway paid a few $100,000.
I guess when I think about it on a bigger scale, it does lead me to believe that you know what, maybe as disc golf gets bigger, that will become, because I will say, guess what? If Paul is throwing this same mid-range around the whole tournament, and it's notable that he has been dominant with it, and the commentator says, yeah, he just keeps going back to that buzz. He keeps going back to that buzz. Guess what? The buzz is gonna go through the roof that week on sales.
And where I think it gets tricky is let's say that.
So maybe I was wrong this whole time. It is actually very important.
Well, let's say where it gets kind of tricky in muddy waters is, let's say that, for instance, this weekend we had no MVP on the lead card, correct?
Right.
I'm trying to think of a brand. Or let's just say
you're saying guys aren't getting their brands read. So
basically. Let's say that Prodigy. Let's say Prodigy has a weekend where the lead card was Innova, Discmania, Discraft, MVP. And then they're all dominating and they're getting their names read. And then Prodigy was the sponsor of the tournament.
The even worse
scenario. And so then their tournament, they paid all this money to sponsor and be the title sponsor of, but then all the money's being driven to different companies because their players aren't on the league.
The even worse scenario is when, let's say, Ian Anderson, I'm not trying to come after Ian Anderson, but he does a disc call-outs the most.
Yeah.
Let's say he's calling a card and he knows everybody's bags pretty well, except for one guy. And that guy throws for a smaller manufacturer, and now he's not getting his disc called out because Ian just doesn't know it. I'm curious if you're going to comment about some stuff. I'm curious to hear thoughts on this topic, because I think this topic is very under the radar and very interesting. Because I think the
thing is, a lot of people get really mad really quick over this topic, and I don't understand how. Because to me, if I'm watching coverage, I could care less if you tell me that was Calvin Heimberg's Rock 3 or if you said overstable mid. Because that's the other thing too, is as you get into disc golf,
you kind of start learning what things are.
If you say Paul McBeth's straight mid-range, I know it's a buzz. And there's a lot of times too where they're like, Paul's pulling out a putter, it looks like here. And I'm like, he literally has an Onyx in his hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
I've seen too many incorrect call outs too, to where I'm like, I know that's not true. There's also in disc golf, just go to YouTube. There are so many in the bags everywhere. If you want to really know what a guy's throwing, like, you can figure it out pretty quickly.
I have a question. So this is not like necessarily my take on this. So like,
all right, let's hear Connor's take on this. Go for it.
If the commentator is calling out what disc they're throwing is technically free advertising. So we're proposing that we're saying that maybe in the future a company needs to be paying for that, for their disc to be.
It should kind of go. The proposal is for it to go away.
Yeah, I would say.
And so then if a company wants to advertise, they have to pay for commercial
because then
space.
I was saying
or whatever.
that if technically them calling out what disc they're throwing is free advertising, wouldn't the player just be wearing a shirt that said Discraft on it?
That's different.
Free advertising, is
because,
it though?
Well, yeah, because if Paul's dominating wearing a Discraft shirt, sure, that's promoting Discraft. Mm-hmm. But it's different than if Paul aces a hole. You're like, what a sick ace with his buzz. You see how straight that flew?
Well, and it's
then
also
like directly.
That's more
that
under.
Makes me want to immediately buy a buzz.
That's more under Paul's control, whereas the commentators are something that's controlled by the Pro Tour. The Pro Tour sells advertising packages, and they're making the decision to read out those discs. Whereas Paul just showing up wearing a shirt, that's on him more like.
And maybe manufacturers just pay their.
Well, that's the other thing. Is the
pay their players
manufacturers
more.
Just yell out.
No, they just pay their players more just to hold up the disc to the camera and be like,
Hey, that's true.
Well, that's the other thing is the manufacturers are paying the player to wear that shirt.
well, they're also paying them to throw those discs. though.
But they're not paying the commentators to say the name of the disc.
Right.
That's where because that's the other thing Brodie's
a
saying is like,
disconnect.
in that scenario, if it actually does that, if they go away, then like that money that would in this scenario be brought in is going back to the players in a roundabout way because it's going to the Pro Tour that's going to put on better events, have more added cash, yada, yada, yada.
Do you think it's realistic to just, as the Pro Tour, like they go to each company that's represented in the final round and say, hey, for this amount of money, we will call out what disc they're throwing?
I think it's a lot easier just to never call it out.
I think you just got to get
and
rid
be
of
like,
it.
if you want to advertise, then
Because
advertise.
then if only one company pays for it, this is a weird feel to that whole
It's like
commentary.
it'd be
that
like
makes
the
sense.
first round of the
Like, you're
Las
calling
Vegas
out-
where it's like,
you're like
that was a
specifically-
T-bird
Crap,
and then
we don't-
Paul's overstable driver.
Yeah, you're
Just
just
like crap. We don't know anything about Castaplast.
There's like this just weird tug of war in disc golf between like disc golf treating themselves as a business and getting the money that they can deserve and get out of the sport, and also everybody helping each other and scratching each other's back. There's this weird tug of war.
Well, that's the thing is there's gonna come a day.
There's so many personal
It's getting very, very
relationships.
close where a big company's gonna come in
And they're not gonna care.
And big companies do not care if they're friends with the other company. Do you think Nike really gives a rip if they're buddy with Adidas?
No.
Heck no. And so they're gonna come into the sport, and this whole like, well, okay, we can't do that because that's gonna step on so and so's toes. Is just gonna go out the window because
It's true.
Nike's gonna be like, well, frick no, we're paying $1 million. You better not be talking about a different company. If you
Yeah.
do, we're gonna pull our advertising money.
Yeah.
And then real quick. And then Disc Golf Pro Tour's gonna be like, well, I'm sorry, if you want that advertising space, you gotta pay for it. They paid for it. That's the thing is disc golf business isn't cutthroat yet. And I know I can already hear the comments being like, well, that's a good thing. That's what makes disc golf different. It's going to get there.
Yeah.
Because business is business. Once you get to the thing is, money makes people do things that they would think they would never do. So people can say they're as nice as they want in the world, but the second you put enough money on the line, like people will immediately just take their morals that they think they
You're
have.
making business sound like a really bad thing right now.
I'm not trying to make it sound bad. I'm just saying that's the truth about money.
We're just going to throw our morals out the window. and
No,
the sport's
I'm just
ruined.
saying that's not going to ruin the sport. I think it'll make it a better product for us. But right now, there's not enough money to make people ruin this buddy.
Right.
Once the millions turn to billions, then you're going to care a lot less if the head of Innova thinks you're a good guy when you're sacrificing $450 million to do so.
Well, thinks you're a good guy on the premise of you're not giving us free advertising and helping us out. Not like you're a bad person. You're just doing business.
The
Right.
business side
Right.
of like, oh, well, thank goodness that so-and-so is helping us out so that we can stay afloat.
Right.
That quickly starts going out the window the more that number goes up.
Business
Gets cutthroat, the more money that gets involved is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, there will be a crazy, like right now, for example, like the only really outside business that's heavily involved in getting into disc golf right now is Bushnell, but we don't really know about the landscape of that because they don't have competitors.
No.
I mean, it would have been really interesting if there was already a rangefinder company and then Bushnell came in. That would have given us idea, but we don't really know.
Disc golfers would have hated that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what'll
exactly.
be interesting. The Idio shoes.
Yeah.
Right? The Idio shoes super great product, going to be well supported by disc golfers.
Right.
The second Adidas comes back into the game, or the second Nike comes into the game,
they'll tear them apart.
That's going to be the interesting thing.
Yeah, they'll tear them apart.
Is then because they're going to have a lot more money to throw around.
They'll have them in retail stores. Like they just, it'll be very interesting. And like, I mean, goodness, help us all if somebody big gets into disc manufacturing.
Or the obvious one is like Patagonia makes a disc golf bag.
Right.
Or something like that, where they're like, all we got to do is think two things about our bag, and we got a disc golf bag.
That'd be really
and you're
cool.
saying we can sell it for $250 and people will buy it, and we're making it for literally 5 cents? Heck yeah. That's not the actual profit margin. Don't listen to that.
Well, their manufacturing power will be so greater, too, that they'll be able to just box people out because their pricing will be so good, because they'll have their own manufacturing. They'll have bigger facilities, lower costs. Like, imagine, it's like a company like Nike or Adidas gets into the shoe game, like you mentioned. They have their own factories, and their costs are so low that they can undercut any shoe company that would be more of a homegrown company instantly. And
but they won't have to, because it'll have a Nike swoosh on the side.
Yeah, they won't have to. I'm
shoe.
saying they can.
like I would rock the frick out of that right now.
I just want Nike to get into the disc making game. How cool would it be?
That's where I don't know if it's going to happen.
It's not gonna. But think about how cool it would be
if
if
it
you had a
did,
Nike
they would
made
buy
disc.
someone out.
Yeah,
they would buy out Prodigy or something like that.
I don't think they care enough to do that.
I don't think right now they don't. Eventually they might. But I mean, Nike doesn't even make clubs anymore.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, golf clubs aren't even profitable enough for Nike, let alone discs.
Yeah.
Like
we know under the radar Ferrari is making Discmania's discs.
That's
that's
Italian
true.
blend.
That
I forgot
Italian
about that.
made, yeah.
Just wait till Lamborghini gets in. Then we're gonna really see.
I want to see car manufacturers make discs. We're going the wrong route here. We don't,
because it's engineering and stuff like that, aerodynamics. It could be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, golf has done a lot of
when
collaborations.
is someone gonna have like
with,
an astrophysicist design a disc?
Well, that's why like golf
It's
does
like NASA
collabs
To
with,
get in a wind tunnel.
they do collabs with Boeing and I think some car companies, but like that's like their big sales pitch. With like they make a drive and they're like, we had aerodynamic consultation from Boeing and they make giant planes, and so we make this driver and it's so fast. Like disc golf needs to get on that wave, because you don't even have to. You could literally just send them a letter and be like, hey, can we say we collabed with you? And it is such.
Would you mind just throwing our disc in one of your wind tunnels for 2 seconds?
Exactly. Imagine the disc comes out and they're saying they collab with some airplane company. Everybody's buying that disc. Like, it's such an easy marketing tactic that disc golf is not using. And like sometimes they use it. Disc golf uses it in the sense of, we collab with this professional disc golfer. They need to start going the technology route. That's where we get interesting.
I want to see him collab with NASA.
Dude, imagine the BMW putter. That thing would suck, man.
It'd probably barely even get off the tee. You'd probably just start puttering 10 feet in front of you.
You guys are funny boys.
Connor's proud of
Now
his
the
car.
Tesla driver, dude, the thing is
The Tesla driver would go 0 to 60 and you blink an eye. It probably so much.
And then finally, all those disc chargers on the extensions on courses are coming in handy.
That's funny.
I mean, we're running out of time. I don't know if I should even talk about Brodie's final Twitter point.
Probably not. Maybe we say that for the banter.
Maybe that's for the banter too.
What was his final one about?
A lot of disc golf fans aren't fans of other sports.
Whoa, yeah. Save that for the banter.
Okay, I'm gonna say one thing about it, because this one really got the crowd going.
Yeah.
He said a lot. He was responding to a tweet that had said that they weren't really a fan of many other sports, and said, I think that's true. A lot of disc golf fans, they're just not fans of other sports. And a lot of people got butthurt, and they were like, that's ridiculous, man. I love watching other sports and disc golf, you freaking idiot. Spoiler alert, he wasn't talking about you then. Like, how do you not put two and two together? If he said a lot of, meaning not all, and then aren't fans of other sports, and you're starting your sentence with, I've played sports my whole life, I'm a diehard fan of other sports.
Yeah.
That tweet wasn't mentioning you.
We're not being addressed in that tweet.
I mean, that's a pretty straightforward point to draw there, but we won't even talk about that. We have a few events going on this weekend. We got Masters Worlds actually just started now. There's a lot of legends out there playing. Just to name a few, we have Dave Feldberg, Michael Johansson, Philo, Schwebe. This isn't really a legend, but Owen Scoggins.
Yeah, she's in the 40 plus.
I didn't realize that.
She's winning.
Yeah, she's.
Good for her.
We have Elaine King, Jennifer Allen, Patrick Brown, Barry Schultz, Yeti. The list goes on of just players that, if you've been around disc golf,
I would so watch coverage
so
of
much
that.
Of it. I think there is coverage.
There's some amazing.
I believe there's
Okay.
going to be some next day coverage.
Because I love watching those guys play. They just throw straight shots everywhere.
I'm hoping
and
there's
don't
coverage
miss
of the
putts.
MP50, because for some reason Barry Schultz and
he's in
Patrick Brown are in
50.
MP50.
Yeah.
And those are the guys I want to watch.
I love watching Barry.
Because that's just retro. Even Patrick Brown. I love how he always has a towel or another disc in his hand, hits one with like You know what I'm talking about?
I just love watching somebody walk
Patrick Brown
up
just looks
and
like he
throw
could
like
beat
the
me
most
up.
air bounce you've ever seen, but still park it.
They just,
It's amazing. They do
fly.
like they just know how to throw it.
Yeah,
Like,
they just watching. You just need to go back and watch retro coverage if you haven't. Watch Barry Schultz and Schwebe and MJ just tear up North Carolina golf. Oh, there's nothing like it.
Good stuff.
There's nothing like it. We also have one of my favorite events of the year going down, which is Ledgestone. Northwoods Black is new this year.
Ooh.
They apparently made Northwoods Gold harder.
That doesn't even seem possible.
How
long is
know.
the backup going to be on that one hole? Is it going to be like 3 hours?
There's no telling what's about to happen out there.
They're going to have campsites at that hole?
So let's get into some predictions of it, though. I think Paul's going to take it down. I think Paul takes it down. I think Ricky comes in second. And the event's always won and lost at Northwoods. So I've got Chris Dickerson coming in third.
That's a great pick. I actually forgot. Well, I knew he was there, but I didn't even think about that. I have Ricky winning, Paul in second, Eagle in third.
I was waiting for Connor's picks, but he only does Dark Horse. On FPO, I think Paige is going to take it down now that Krishna Tatar is gone. I have Katrina Allen coming in second and Haley King sneaking into the third place spot there.
I've got Kat in first, just because I just don't trust Paige right now. I've got Paige. That's basically it. I've got Paige in second, and I'm pretty sure. I'll just make sure. Yeah, I have Missy Gannon in third.
That's a good pick. All right, let's go through the Dark Horse picks. Who actually won last week?
I don't know.
Did I or you?
I don't know. I think it was close. We were tied going into the last round.
We've got to look this up. Trevor's curse was broken.
The Mike Carmen, I think
the curse is broken, people.
If you don't, I don't know what that's from.
That's from The Office, dude.
Which one?
The American one. It's from the episode. Remember, he hits Meredith with his car. And he says that there's a curse. And then it turns out he took her to the hospital in time because they were able to find that she had rabies.
You're just too good at this point.
So Mike Carmen finished at 5 down.
Oh, that's not
Did
good.
I have Daniel Polk?
Yeah.
6 down. Connor, I'm sorry. I don't remember who you had, but he was pretty far over par. You had Matt Polson?
No.
Louis Laporta, that's who you want.
That was who
he was 7 over par.
That's fine. That's okay, Lewis.
Correct.
Or Louis.
Mike had the power to break the curse, so that's an accomplishment. Good on you.
We'll
was
just
pretty
see
impressive.
if you still go through. I believe I picked this person as my dark horse pick last year.
You should have let me pick him so I could curse him. That'd have been really funny.
And he did me well. He did me really well
Sorry,
last year.
Justin.
So I'm rolling with my boy again. Mr. Justin Rozak at Ledgestone is my dark horse pick. Played with him at Liberty. No, I actually never got to play with him at Liberty. He came the year after me. Y'all got to play with him at
I had the
Liberty.
distinct pleasure.
I think he's going to do pretty well out there this year.
I picked his college rival, Sam Drummond.
I did get to play against Sam. That kid's a kid.
That kid.
He's my age. He's sick.
Sam
That's a great pick.
Sam is a beast these days, and he was solid back then. He had a really good putt and a really good forehand, but he must be way even better than he was back then.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot better. Who do you got for your dark
Mine
horse
was a
pick?
lot less personal. I just chose Ian Burchett because he looks like he's done pretty decent this year.
I think we've picked him.
He's been picked a few times.
He might have won one for me once.
Yeah.
So it's a good pick as well. All right, so we've got Justin Rozak, Sam Drummond, Ian Burchett. We'll see what they are able to do. If you want to, check the link in the description below to our Patreon. If you want to hear the Bogey Bro banter, where we're going to talk through some tournament memories, what on earth happened to my new putters and what they are, as well as possibly go into a little bit of Brodie's final point over there. $5 a month gets you access to 4 episodes of Bogey Bro banter every single month, as well as our previous episodes, and 1 exclusive Patreon video, as well as access to some live streams and more behind-the-scenes content. So you definitely want to check that out if you're a fan of ours, or possibly if you're not and you just want to hear what we have to say on the Bogey Bro banter. But other than that, we will talk to you all next week.